but we pray in English.
The Englishman said,
I, my, me, mine, 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 I, my, me, mine.
I had a little box when my Lord made me, and in that little box I did put a tree, a phony, a teddy bear, a bright green sled, everything around me that my eyes did see. How can a little box never hold much dread? A pony and a tree puzzles your poor head. It can't, of course, live in a tiny baby's mind. His whole world becomes a little box instead. Well, as I grew older, my box grew too. Held airplanes and ships and a birch canoe, and school books of foreign trips and college proms. Good times and friends of plenty, yes, and also you. But somehow in this box would only fit one school, one family, one country, and one social rule, and certainly one church for only my ways right, and anyone with other ways is just a fool. So I used to think, but now I must confess, at judging fools I wasn't any great success. Truth somehow lived without me, though I called it mine. What box could hold the world? It's just preposterous.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Our reading is taken from Rays of the One Light, weekly commentaries on the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita by Swami Kriyananda. This is week 39. Many are the pathways to truth. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. On the dedication page of Swami Kriyananda's book, The Path, appears the following account. A group of Paramahansa Yogananda's disciples had gone with him to see a movie about the life of Gyandev, a great saint of medieval India. Afterwards, they gathered and listened to the master explain certain subtler aspects of that inspiring story. A young man in the group mentioned another film he had seen years earlier in India about the life of Mirabai, a famous woman saint. "If you'd seen that movie," he exclaimed, "you wouldn't have even liked this one." The guru rebuked him. "Why make such comparisons? The lives of great saints manifest in various ways the same one God." The Bible contains a similar account in the Gospel of St. Luke, chapter 9. And John said, "Master, we saw one casting out devils in thy name, and we forbade him, because he followeth not with us. And Jesus said unto him, Forbid him not, for he that is not against us is for us." The more central a truth, the greater the number of contexts in which it can be applied. Truth is like a pure white light, containing within itself the full spectrum of the rainbow. Let no one tell you what your path to God ought to be. Many are the paths. Select your own according to the dictates of your own nature, no matter how out of step that puts you with other people. Sri Krishna in the 3rd chapter of the Bhagavad Gita states, "Trying even unsuccessfully to fill one's own spiritual duty, Dharma, is better than pursuing successfully the duties of others. Better death itself in the pursuance of one's own duties. The pursuance of another's duties is fraught with spiritual danger." Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om. Om. Om.
those of you who don't know us, my name is Manisha, and this is my husband Dambara, and it is our joy to be with you this morning. Thank you for coming. I'm going to start by reading a prayer from Whispers from Eternity, which is a collection of prayers that Paramahansa Yogananda put together. And this one is, well, the title is the same as the first sentence, so I'll just begin. Let me be Christian, Jew, Hindu, Buddhist, Mohammedan, or Sufi. I care not what be my religion, race, creed, or color, if only I can win my way to thee. But let me be none of these, if that identity enmeshes me in an enclosing net of religious or social formalities. Let me travel the royal high road of realization which leads to thee. If I am traveling on some bypath of religion, lead me onto the one common highway of realization which leads straight to thee. Send me the sunshine of thy wisdom, that it lead me to the morning of my growing powers, and send me the moon of thy mercy to guide me rightly, if ever I am lost in the dark night of sorrow. We have so much more exposure to different pathways to truth nowadays. Not that long ago, 200 years ago even. My microphone won't stay on. There. Even 200 years ago, most people stayed within the confines of their little village. And they might not even travel 10 miles away to the next village. But now we have cars, we have air travel, we just mix with all different cultures around the world. So we've been exposed to so many different pathways to truth. And that helps us learn tolerance. Well, not all of us have learned tolerance, but many of us have learned tolerance. As if I needed this distraction, right? A little lower?
You're good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll try not to move. Ha. So we've learned to refine our tolerance because we've been exposed to more ways of looking at life, and it enriches us to look at the way other people see truth. And it's easier to be tolerant of someone else's beliefs when you can hold it a little bit at a distance. You have the option of stepping into it and participating in it. You also have the option of going back home where it's safe and familiar and things happen the way you expect them to happen, and it feels right to you. I just finished watching a documentary on the Amish community. I am fascinated by this group of deeply spiritual people who work with the soil in their hands and live without modern conveniences. I just really imagine what that world could be like. And this particular documentary focused on the Amish practice of shunning. And so it wasn't quite the idyllic documentary that I thought it was going to be, because it was dealing with a very difficult topic of how they enforce their rules and how they encourage, or in extreme examples, coerce people into staying true to the rules. And many of these people that the documentary was following were people who had left the community and gone to live with the English. That's all of us. Anybody outside the Amish community is the English. And they were shunned for life. And it was a very drastic punishment, purposefully, because they needed to encourage people to stay within the community. So it was hard not only on the people who left and caused them immeasurable pain and doubt and grief, but it also was very hard on the people left behind because their family was missing a person as if they were dead, except that this also carried shame and failure. Somehow they hadn't been able to keep that brother or daughter in the family. They had failed. So it was a very, very hard teaching that is part of the Amish community. And so it was easy for me to be tolerant of them because I could watch that documentary and watch those people and understand the trials that they were going through. And then I could go get a hug and feel safe and comfortable in my own belief skin. So I could be tolerant of that. And tolerance is actually a very important counterbalance to truth-seeking. Because the reason there are so many pathways to truth is that we are such unique individuals. Not only do we have outward differences and similarities, we also have inner differences and similarities. Just think of the variation, the huge variety that we have been able to manifest, given the fact that we have 2 eyes, a nose, a mouth, 2 ears, hair. That's what we have to work with. And look at the variety. I mean, even people with the same coloring or the same build, we can still discern differences in individuals amongst a crowd of people. We can pick out the friend that we know out of a room full of strangers. And there's a tenet that I believe to be very true, that what we manifest on the material plane is a reflection of what is also true on the energy plane, on the energy plane, that plane that we can't really see, but we can get clues about through the things that we can see. So it's easy for me to imagine that just as we have such variety in our facial expressions and the way we clothe our bodies, the colors we wear, how we adorn ourselves, there's also that same amount of variation in our astral spines, in our heart energy, in how we move that energy up and out to the spiritual eye. So of course, what I'm going to do and the experiences I need to further my spiritual growth are going to be very different from yours and yours and yours and everybody's, because we're unique. Each one of us is unique. I've often listened to people tell me about their mystical experiences, something that changed the way they view the world, that brought a moment of magic into their hearts, and how it just moved them in ways that they had never imagined possible. And I've had those experiences too, different experiences, but that mystical, powerful, wondrous experience, I've had those too. But when I listen to somebody else describe theirs, it's like, really? You found that all that inspiring? Or, wow, yay, that sounds great. It's hard for one person to communicate the experience that they have had and try to give it to another person, like through a Vulcan mind meld. Maybe that would work. But what I can recognize is that the person is describing to me an experience that I've had, and respect the person's experience because of how profound my experience had been for me. It doesn't help me relive my experience, and I don't experience their experience through their words, but I recognize that this was profound, and I have deep respect for it. So there's so much individuality in how we move through our spiritual life and how we progress spiritually. It's so important to recognize that we have these unique realities, that Swami wrote it into the wedding vows. And I printed out one section of the wedding vows because I want to read it to you because it's in here. Dear beloved, I will be true to you as I pray always to be true to God. I will love you without condition as I would be loved by you, and as we are ever loved by God. I will never compete with you. I will cooperate for our own and for all others' highest goods. I will forgive you always and under all circumstances. I like to tease Dambara about that one. I will forgive you always, but I didn't say when. I will forgive you always and under all circumstances. And here it is. I will respect your right to see truth as you perceive it and to be guided as you feel deeply within yourself. And I will work with you always in freedom to arrive at a common understanding. All that we do, may we do for God's glory. May we live and grow together in His love and joy. So there it is, right there, in one of the deepest vows that you can take, because marriage is a deeply spiritual practice. You have a partner in marriage, and it's someone who knows you really well, that can reflect back to you what can be helpful to you in the moment. Someone to help you through those hard times, whether it's lifting a heavy box or crying over the death of a loved one. You have someone to help you through those. And when you have a spiritual connection and a spiritual goal, it gives you powerful tools to learn more quickly and more deeply what your spiritual path is all about. Now, it's not always easy, because the differences in spiritual path is not always over there where you can walk away from it and be tolerant of it. Sometimes it surrounds you and swirls around you. An example of that is when Dambara and I were trying to decide whether or not to move up to Portland from the Bay Area. And we found ourselves on opposite sides of the discussion, because I was really sure that this was the right thing for us to do, and I had a lot of good reasons why. And Dambara was very sure that he should stay in Palo Alto, that we should stay in Palo Alto, and he had a lot of good reasons why. And so I mounted all my thought and articulate objections and suggestions and explanations of why he was wrong and why I was right and why my reasons were more important than his reasons. And I talked a lot over many days. We talked a lot over many days, trying to find the key that would help us come to a common understanding. These vows are powerful in many ways, but one way is that they're so practical. So many times when Dambara and I aren't understanding each other or just can't make something work right, we'll read through this list of vows and we'll say, that's the one that's not working right now. And it helps us focus, sort of gets rid of the who did what when, who said what, why, and it helps us realize the core of where we've started teetering, and it helps us get back to center so that we can think of it in terms of spiritual growth rather than my way and your way. So they're very powerful in their practicality. And so as we're having this discussion over many days, it was a really difficult time because it wasn't something I could walk away from and be tolerant of. I was up to my nose in it. There was no way I could escape it. My marriage was falling apart. And then he said, I don't know if it's the right step for me spiritually to move to Portland. And that was it. That was the core of it. that was what we needed to focus on. That was what was wrong with the situation in how I was looking at it and how he was looking at it. And that just clarified, because he wasn't sure if it was good for his spiritual growth. And it says right here, I will respect your right to see truth as you perceive it. So I realized that even though my reasons were right and my suggestions were better articulated and my will was stronger, all of that didn't matter because he didn't know if it was right for his spiritual growth. And that was what was at the core of our discussion. So that's what we started talking about. And we talked about what this scenario might look like. How would that feel? What this scenario might look like. How would that feel? Here's a possibility. Maybe this could happen. And suddenly we were on the same side trying to figure out what was right for his spiritual growth. Because I was certain, I knew my role was, my job was easy in that part, but my job was hard in setting that aside and working with Dambara together to come to a common understanding of what was right for his spiritual growth. Now, you can all see the happy ending. Here he is, here we are, and we're still working together with respect and love and the acknowledgement that the other person's spiritual truth can only be discerned and understood and really taken on a very, very deep level by the person who owns that astral spine. So sometimes we get to practice when it's easy, and we can turn off the documentary and go get our hug. And sometimes we have to practice, when it's so hard. But when we have faith in truth and the power of seeking truth, will always prevail.
We just talked a little bit about Dharma, and so did Krishna. I have this theory that Krishna reincarnated as George Burns, and I'm going to tell you why. It's because George Burns said, I'd rather fail at something I love than succeed at something I hate. That's just what Krishna said, that it's better to succeed in your own Dharma. No, it's better to fail doing your own Dharma than succeed in somebody else's. Now, why would that be? Because, just what Manisha was saying, that we have our own particular path. It's our own unique combination of background experiences, challenges, lessons we need to learn, and that's what we came into this life with that package. And God is helping us. He's giving us exactly the lesson plan that's going to help us with our particular things that we need to learn. And I'll be honest with you, when I was in Palo Alto, she was saying, I was just in Camelot. I thought of it as, just the ideal paradisical kind of situation that, couldn't be any better. And why would I want to leave that? I couldn't envision any other scenario. But I'll be honest with you. I felt like I was kind of cruising a little bit, And you don't want to tell anybody that because you know that if you tell Divine Mother that you're kind of cruising a little bit, that she's going to say, oh, let me amp it up a little bit. And, I was comfortable. But I just had this feeling that, well, I'm not growing as much as I could be, but kind of keeping that to myself. So I sort of knew, though. But when we came around to the point of what's best spiritually and all that, I did eventually, I'm kind of slow, but I did eventually come around to realize that, okay, this might be a growthful thing. In fact, it has been. And the guru is like a marriage. When you are saying to God, you know what, I really do want to grow, because it's not, a lot of people, it seems, a lot of people just want to be comfortable, and that's okay. They had an uncomfortable past, they just want to be comfortable. But after a while, you get tired of it. You say, okay, enough of this comfort stuff. I just want to grow. I want to have a little expansiveness, because that's what is really fun, is just kind of expanding our horizons. So we'll create trouble for ourselves just to expand our horizons. We'll blow, karmic bombs, up just to get things kind of going. But it's better to do it in harmony with God and God's plan. It's a lot more fun that way. And so if we get to the point where we say, okay, I really do want to grow, teacher, I'm in this class willingly, I'm not dragging my feet, and I'm really open to what you have to say. Now, it's great if you say that to your parent or your partner or to your spiritual teacher, your guru, if you have one, or if you're seeking one, to offer yourself up, or just to God, and God will assign you one, offer yourself up and say, that's what discipleship is just saying, I really want guidance. I really want to learn, I want to grow. And growth should be joyful, It's not something that's painful or stressful or causes tension. Growth is something that's a relief. It's something that is talking to your soul, and your soul is saying, yes, that's what I'm looking for. It may not be easy or simple, but it's not always easy or simple to go to school and meet new kids and to get along with people that are different than you. But it's what we want to learn how to do. So when we recognize that basically everything that comes to us, what's your Dharma? It's what's in front of you. Our lessons, our challenges that come to us, it's a matter of just meeting them with the right attitude, of a willing spirit, of seeing God behind that, and saying, okay, if I have a tendency to resist this, or judge this, or separate myself from it, or anything that causes me to contract, then am I learning the lesson? Probably not. I'm probably just learning that I have something to learn. So what's the right attitude? It's just getting in our spine, and meditation helps hugely with that. That's why we really emphasize and encourage and practice ourselves as much as we can, meditating regularly, twice a day, morning and night ideally, and just bringing ourselves to center and taking deep breath, and then opening our hearts to God's presence and saying, okay, teacher, what's the lesson plan today? How can I align with that? And then we do our best to stick with that, keep our minds open, pay attention, see what comes to us. And then at the end of the day, we do our best to look back and say, okay, how did we do today? I kind of got into that argument and that didn't do so well. Okay, how can I do better at that tomorrow? So the more we can really just look at every single thing that comes to us as God's lesson plan and say yes. Swami Kriyananda actually titled his first album of musical songs that came to him as the title was Say Yes to Life. And the more we can just take that attitude, even if we're confused or we don't understand, just bring ourselves back to God, to Guru, and say, all right, you got to help me with this. Take me through this. This is not easy. It's probably easy just because I'm afraid or I had some bad experience in the past, but I know it's the right growthful thing for me. And there's good things to be learned on the other side of this. Other thing I want to say is just to have a little perspective. I found it useful once. Somebody was saying they keep a little picture in their pocket of what's called the Hubble Deep Space Field. I'm going to tell you what that is. Hubble Deep Space Field is the farthest thing that we've ever seen in a telescope. And what they did is they just looked at this tiny little bit of the sky and focused the Hubble telescope at that, and really, really, really focused in it. And what normally seems to us like just black nothing, when you see this image, it's just these incredible variety of jewels in this middle of a black field. And all of the jewels are different unique galaxies in this tiny little, what looks to us like insignificant corner of space. So this person said he keeps this picture in his pocket, and anytime, in his words, he sees somebody arguing about something trivial like nuclear war or whether tomatoes will grow this year or not, he basically says, do you realize that astronomers say that the universe is 156 billion light years across? So that if you were to follow the beam of a flashlight for 1 billion years, you'd still have 155 billion years left to go. And then he, gets into a little kind of discussion with him about that. Sometimes they are open to it, sometimes they're not. But I find that it helps put things in perspective to realize that we're getting all upset about this little thing that's happening, in our classroom with our playmate or partner or spiritual teacher or the workers around us or whatever. just take a deep breath and realize what an incredible galaxy, what an incredible creation this all is. And each one of us is a galaxy. Each one of us is this little jewel-like galaxy in this infinite field of space. What an amazing thing that we get to interact with all this. And just to be able to see God expressing through each one of us uniquely, to appreciate the unique growth path that is happening in that particular galaxy. And that happens when we are appreciative of what's happening in our own galaxy, and when we see God as having manifested in this, and when we say, wow, God, that's pretty doggone amazing. Those were the last words of Steve Jobs that I really appreciate as he was going into the other world. He said, oh, wow. Oh, wow. Oh, wow.
Long